Hello, people of New World. It's me, Lamani, and welcome back to the channel. And today, I'm going to be covering all these patch notes that came out for the delayed PTR and explain everything as far as PTR releases, notes, things, big changes are coming. And I was in the middle of a workout. I stopped, hence all the sweat, but I'm ready to go. So let's dive into these. All right, so here's my live reaction. One, they are not releasing the PTR how we once thought. We are going to have 4 separate releases for PTR. Release 1 will be the event, 3v3 map, and the first light retraction. So some neat stuff. We aren't going to be getting raids right away. We then look at release 2. We're going to have the season 2 trials, the narrative, the rewards track, OPR refresh stuff, which isn't very big, Siege of Sulfur, and raid groups. So that means we get the 10-man raid and the solo raid and all of the storyline things along with season pass stuff, my absolute favorite. Release 3 is going to just be the Sam Warren trial. So we'll be getting that separately so that they can take extra time on that. And then release 4 will just be cross-world OPR. I truly believe this isn't going to get enough testing as much as it will need because it's just by itself, and maybe we'll get some readjustments here. But these are the notes that they put out on Steam, as you might have seen in the ping from the public Discord that has replaced the forums. Now, let's talk about all the changes that are going to be coming in Season 2. So starting off, we have World Experience. A couple of quest things. They're just changing some general things, fixing bugs, resolving issues. Nothing really that in-depth. Same with Brimstone Sands. And continue on through expeditions. Still, the one thing that pops out to me in Tempest Heart is they're making it so Nashatun, I don't know how to really say it, you can better see the AoEs coming in, so you might not get tail swiped off a ledge. Other than that, fixing issues, and so on. We then get the same thing with AI, fixing issues, great. General combat changes, fixing issues, great. The things I would like to highlight in the general changes. 1, removal of Hale and Hearty town buff. As such, we will all get 10% more health baseline. 2, you can now leave combat the second after killing the final enemy in an engagement. So that should help with some of that not being in combat, being in combat issues when you're trying to swap gear, perhaps in war. And the only other thing I can really say is the 300 in attribute bonus, which is for non-combat, will go from 10% to 25%. New blocking functionality is coming for combat. It's going to allow non-shield weapons to actually mitigate portions of ranged damage. So you're getting shot at by a bow, take your great axe out, boom. Take your life staff out, boom. Could help a little bit, depends on how much. But when we're looking at it, it's 50% on a one-handed weapon, 30% will pen on a two-handed weapon, and with magic weapons, it will be 40%. So you'll also get stamina damage along with that, and then shields will remain unchanged. Blunderbuss, the big thing to highlight, you are getting increased range by 1 meter. So pretty neat. That's about it, other than just fixing some general issues. So on the bow, we're actually getting some significant changes. There's Rain of Arrows buff, but that's not what I want to talk about. We're changing dodge and weave to only trigger at full stamina, but I want to talk about knee shot, evasive tactics, and rending headshot. So knee shot, the ultimate on the left side that applies to slow whenever you shoot somebody in the legs, is going to be changed into whenever you headshot somebody, they will be rended for 3 seconds. Not that great, but when you start to look at some things in terms of changing ultimates, we are actually getting evasive tactics as the ultimate on the left side instead of the leg shot passive. Meaning, if you actually look into the tree, this is the thing that will allow you to get increased damage whenever you dodge with a bow. So in a sense, this is sort of a bow nerf because you'll have to go deeper into the left side tree and not be taking more passives and ability passives on the right side of the tree. So we'll have to see what's really changing here. With the fire staff, we're seeing an incinerate buff. We're seeing a pillar of fire nerf. Other than that, just a couple fixed issues with some random interactions here. As far as the great axe, we're getting a little bit of an execute buff. Whirlwind, you're going to move faster and rotate faster. So that's pretty nice. And then Reap is getting a slight buff as well. On the greatsword, we're seeing a slight Roaring Rupture buff on its Fortify and a slight nerf on Skyward Slash, which is going to reduce the range of its impact point. On the hatchet, we are seeing a little bit of an infected throw buff, getting some increased damage. Same with a rending throw buff, getting a little bit more rend. And then with Raging Torrent, you're also going to be able to block to cancel it instead of having to commit a full dodge. And social distancing, they're removing the distance condition on the root so that you can hit them pretty much anywhere and get that rooting benefit. Nice for schizos, also nice if you choose to use it as a peeling option. Ice Gauntlet, slight Ice Pylon nerf where you have to have your Ice Gauntlet actually out in order for Pylon to be there, otherwise it gets destroyed. Wind Chill, big buff, 4% weapon damage per tick. Good luck using that, but the grit from the perk is baseline on the ability now, so I'm wondering if the perk is just going to make it do more damage or if they're willing to rework that a little bit. Life Staff, kind of a splash of light nerf. Kind of weird, to be honest with you, because we're getting a reduced radius from 100 meters to 25 meters, which for those of you who don't know is incredibly short. So now you're looking at it's pretty much the same distance as a DE or an LE. They are increasing the overall healing from 60% to 80%, but they're really not giving us that much with it. If you look at it, why would you splash in that range as opposed to just running double single target? Personally, in my opinion, you're going to stand still, do a weaker heal, and you still have to be closer to your team. You don't get that added benefit of pretty much anyone can be anywhere. That's not looking good for Splash of Light. And I'm willing to wager that a lot less people will use it because most people are typically using it with spread out groups or people who are inside of a fort. When we're looking at the musket, we're getting a better crosshair so we can see it easier in combat. And we're getting a buff to power shot and powder burn where you don't have to reload and it can be used for shooter stance. You're also getting the cooldown activation to actually start when the shot is fired rather than when it is loaded so that you can just chain these over and over again and then not have to do that whole reload spiel. Sword and Shield, what we're looking at here, we're getting a Whirling Blade buff. It's sped up, more damage, better hitbox, and then you have some little bit of flexibility to redirect the attack and actually get a better rend from it. Reverse Stab buff, you're getting a sped up animation, better homing, and it's just a bigger hitbox. In Defiant Stance, it will actually reduce attacker stamina damage while active, and the buff, and then we'll also see a defensive formation increase from 3 meters to 4 meters, and Shield Rush is going to reduce the recovery time of the extra animation that's played by up to 7 frames. So a little bit faster on the end where you hit them and then you're like kind of whoop, it's going to be quicker. When we look at Spear, a little bit of a Cyclone buff. Nice to see if you want to be a spin to winner inside of clumps. And then the VG, it will now also have that grit at the 300 con attribute. And as we see later, this will also be able to roll thwarting strikes now so that you can be a Void Blade Demon. Baleful Tether, they're going to add some functionality so that the tether will stay active when you swap to a secondary weapon. I think this is going to be big for PvE, but not as much PvP because it is pretty hard to land at times. And then on the Warhammer, we're going to see a Mighty Gavel improvement here where you're going to get a better AoE for the attack and a little bit of a rework for the Justice for All. Armor Breaker buff, 20% damage, 10% rend. And then on the Rapier, a little bit of a flurry buff, more damage, better homing. And then Tondo, increased range over here. As I mentioned with perks, the big things to take out of here, thwarting strikes will be able to roll on void gauntlets, destroying traps won't give mortal empower, and then just some extra fixes over here. The big one I want to highlight though is invasions. They're actually going to make invasions shorter, send the invites out later, and overall make it a better experience and a little bit more difficult. So they're increasing the difficulty of earlier waves to more smoothly ramp up the challenge over time. Invites will go out 5 minutes before it starts instead of 15, and the total duration will be 25 minutes instead of 30. You'll see those invites come out 5 minutes before, and then it's ending 5 minutes earlier, so instead of 45 minutes, it's now going to be a total of 30 minutes spent in the invasion. That'll be a very nice change. We'll see some outpost rush fixes, just general things with structures, nothing that impressive here. Fort updates, it's going to be the gates, if you're building doors, they will take increased thrust damage resistance, so they're going to be harder to break down. They're also making an update to the Corrupted Portal event, where it's no longer the 750 Azoth Bank, it's actually an event where you're killing things to summon it. We now have some extra summoning stone options. From the Alpha Wolves, you can get bears. From Ugg and Dug on both sides, you can get the Spectre summons, and the Corrupted Portal will be the Brute Still. We do have some Bareness updates. They mentioned they want it to be a bit more strategic. There's an interactable shield wall at both entrances that prevents ranged attacks from going through, meaning you're going to have to actually clump fight in order to win Baron and not just steal it. Personal scoring things, you're going to get more for doing the actual objectives here, and then death updates, you're now only going to drop half of your resources. For arenas, the rewards are increased. The first 2 arenas you complete each day, they will give you a weapon or armor cache each, just the first 2. So these are going to be very similar to the OPR crates. They're the exact same, and the general idea of upgrading them to 600 is still in line, so this is going to be a great way to get some extra gear. Open world PvP, just some Azoth Salt changes. As I had mentioned with Hale and Hearty, Stalwart has also been removed, so that's the big thing to mention in economy progression and gear right away, and then just some things with Gypsum Casts to make them more inclined to hit your preferred stats here when crafting them. We also have some item sets being re-added as drops. I don't personally remember what any of these are, but if you dive into it and want to find out, drop it in the comments down below. Territory management. We're actually seeing some increases in the territory income pool from Morningdale and Weaver's Fen since First Light is no longer able to be claimed as a territory. So these ones, I'm assuming these are the ones that they're seeing generate the least amount of income across the board, will actually give you a little bit more. We're getting a fishing buff here. You're going to reduce the time to get a nibble when you're using bait. You're going to have better tension recovery. The celebration zoom no longer does it for uncommon and rare fish. You can sit there and spam and spam and spam. All of the baits have been changed where they now only affect the rarity. There's also different crafting costs, and they've rebalanced the baits. And some are only effective at certain times of day, kind of similar how they used to be, but it might make a little bit more of a difference depending on what they've done. There's now also some legendary bait changes so that you have a slim chance to catch a rare fat salmon. I'm not a fisher extraordinaire, but it's looking like we're getting some better fishing things. They've also redistributed each of the territory's fish populations to better balance the value of each territory's fishing pool so that all the territories have something exciting. I don't know what that means yet. We're going to have to dive into some fishing. And now we have sturgeon and sculpin are catchable in fresh and salt water, and frogfish are now only catchable in salt water. And then legendary fish have new homes. So that's probably because of the first light changes. Seasons. We're looking at the journey. This is the stuff I'm interested in, so I can power level again. But we have second journey, and there's going to be more tasks in chapters 2, 4, and 5. The activity card list will now have at least 3 tasks from each category, up from 1. And the card task list will have 21 tasks instead of 16. Truthfully, this is going to make speedrunning significantly faster. You're going to be able to stand in town, do the same things, but almost every single time you're sitting there rolling, you're going to be getting pretty much guaranteed of salvage, applying like the coatings, everything. I think this is personally, if they're wanting to take more time with this, this is a bad change if you're just thinking about how quickly you can pump through the activity card. So right now, you know, I did it on day 1. I sat there, stood still, cooking. I can do that again on Season Pass 2, where I stand still, cooking, salvaging, and using the weapon coding method, and I will guaranteed get those on every single roll, or I'll be able to sit in OPR. Kind of an odd change in my opinion. We also see some new activity tasks: killing scorpions, gathering resources, kill Dunewalkers, name Dunewalkers, elite sulfur chests, getting a killing blow in PvP. That one's already been in there, so that's an interesting one. I'm not quite sure why we have that one again, unless there's another change. 100 PvP XP and loot an elite chest. They want to make sure that there's a clear path for solo players, but personally, I just feel like what they're doing is, hey, we already have the system and we're just going to make it easier so it feels less grindy for a shorter amount of time, right? If I'm reading this correctly, I just want to make sure we're getting increased experience from season challenges. So 1, it's going to be faster. The activity card, we're going to have more options for the vials and axes that we could just stand still doing. And we're going to have a bigger pool to pull from, that being 21 tasks in total with 7 different types of stamps. And we're just going to sit there and mash through it again. Kind of unfortunate, but who knows? We'll have to dive more into that as that pops up onto the PTR. Then we're getting some visual fixes, some other issues just being fixed across the board. We are getting some increased tooltip clarity as far as how healing power works or how incoming healing will actually display. And then the big thing I want to talk about is quality of life. We're getting a search for perks and gems within the inventory so you can filter by perk and gem. That is going to be big for me. Other than that, in social, you have to have at least 25 members in order to deck on a territory. I guess that's a good change. I mean, I don't really know many companies that were decking below 25, so we'll have to see how all that goes. Otherwise, audio and voiceover changes. I know I basically just went through the patch notes. These are the big things I think you need to pull from all of this if you don't know how to read, like I generally don't know how. But I'm excited to see what happens. There's some questionable things as far as like the season pass goes, where I just don't necessarily agree. And I think we truly don't want to play bingo. And they're just making it so it's going to take less time, meaning we're going to pump through the content faster. I'm not quite sure. But across the board, we have weapon changes, season changes, content coming, and lots of things on the way. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thank you to every single one of you beautiful people for being you. Peace.